Welcome back, everyone. Today we did some wood burning. The Hogwarts Crest on a wooden, unfinished wood tray. So I'm going to probably be playing some music for the speed up portion of this, but to start off, I got some sandpaper. This was 150 grit, and all that I'm doing is cutting out a small portion of it. And all we're going to be doing is doing just an easy base sand on the wood today because, well, as you can see, there's a little bit of markings from where it was sitting, something rubbed against it, probably my nail flicked against it at one point and some nail polish transferred for all I know, but just a light sanding to remove any kind of imperfections on the wood. So once you've got your base sanding done, I went all the way around on the inside. I didn't worry about the outside at all. We have the handles, which have a little bit of wood debris sticking out. So what I did was I took my sandpaper and flipped it over, applied a piece of tape. This was just painter's tape. You could use duct tape or masking tape. Anything that's going to give it a little bit of strength with flexibility is what you're looking for. So by applying the tape, it does give you that strength. And all I did was cut a tiny strip out, and that allows me to work with the curves of the handle and kind of move the sandpaper around a bit easier just to clear off those edges. So once you've got your wood fully sanded to where you're happy, you want to either use an air gun or I just blew on it just to remove any of the dust. You can use a paper towel as well, just to get any of that excess dust removed. Next, we prepped our template, so I just printed out the Hogwarts Crest, and I measured and centered it where I wanted it to be. Then you tape down your template, basically, of what you're going to be doing. Grab some transfer paper and make sure the black side goes down. And then all you have to do is use a little tool. This is a dotting tool. It's actually what I use for manicures as well, for nail art designs. But it works really well for transferring with transfer paper. You don't need a lot of pressure. All you have to do is just basically trace your design. And while you trace, what the transfer paper does is it transfers it onto whatever's underneath. So it's going to transfer our whole design onto that wood tray so that we have our guide ready to go. I usually like to do a section and then check underneath to see that I've done everything in that section. Sometimes you miss a small portion. This way it helps me so that I get the whole image as it is to transfer over. Alright, so this is the wood burning tool that I use now. I got it at Michael's. It's got a temperature control gauge. I really am enjoying this. I actually was very lucky. I got it 50% off on one of Michael's coupons. So I feel really glad about that. On the bottom of this unit is a wire piece that pops out, and then you can connect it to the side of the unit. And what it does is it holds up your hand piece, which is super handy, especially if you need to set it down for a second to readjust what you're working on. This holds your hot hand piece so that it's not rolling around the table or falling on the floor or burning anything. So here's your hand piece that you'll be holding. And it came with 4 different types of tips and this pair of, I guess we'll call them tweezers for lack of a better term, but these are the 4 tips. This is a regular, just your run-of-the-mill, every type of thing that you can do. This is more for shading. It's got a pointed tip more. This has a more rounded tip, still has that curve, and it's also a different type of shading tool. And then you have your fine point tool, which has that ball tip, and that's actually the one that we're going to be using for this particular design. It gives you the really small, fine lines. And there's another look at it. So it's really easy to connect to your handpiece. Your handpiece has 2 hole sockets into it, and the tips have the 2 bars, and you just line them up, push the tip down until you hear it click, and then it's ready to go. When you do want to switch tips, that's what these tweezers are for. They just connect and pull out your tip. So once you have heated up your wood burning tool, whichever type of tool that you're using, you're just going to pick a point to start on your piece of wood in your design, and you're just going to trace back over everything. Now, when you're tracing, you don't need to use pressure. The heat is going to burn the wood. You don't need to press down into it. So you're just going to trace over lightly, letting the tool do the work for you and letting it burn. You can go back over parts too if it didn't burn as dark as you want. That's also where the temperature control comes in nice, because if you have a lower temperature, you're going to have more of a shading effect and not so much of a darker effect. So now that we have our piece fully wood burned, I like to go back in and look at the piece and see if there's any imperfections. Particularly here between the lion and the snake, there is a trace line that doesn't need to be there. It's just a perfectionist thing for me personally. So what I do is I take a small piece of sandpaper and I just go over the wood part where that transfer paper, we created the line, and when I traced it, I got off mark slightly. It's supposed to be a straight line, and that one happened to curve out a little bit. So you can't use an eraser. It doesn't work with this transfer paper. But I did learn that if you use sandpaper very gently just on the wood part, then it does help remove it. You want to try and stay, like I said, only on the wood, because if you sand over where you've burned, it's going to spread the burn color instead of keeping it clean. And even still, some of the edges got a little bit sanded down, so I'm just going back in with the wood burning tool and sharpening up that edge there. I hope you guys have really enjoyed watching this video. I hope that you give it a like and subscribe to the channel to see more artwork coming and different types of things. You can find us on Instagram and on Twitter now, both at Notemon, and also the blog is www.notemon.com. I hope you guys are having a great weekend, and we'll see you next time. Knox.